Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Build Your Best Life. Tonight, you are watching our Blueprint for Success podcast. My name is Jocelyn Child, and I am your host for tonight. We have a great topic on more than their mistakes, helping young men rewrite their story. And we have a returning favorite with us tonight, an expert. Dr. Shannon is joining us, and we are so excited. We love it when you come through and drop your nuggets and lessons from expertise and experience for our audience and share for young men who are on their journey and on their way to adulthood. So thank you so much, Dr. Shannon, for being with us tonight. How are you? And tell the audience more about what you do.
Absolutely. So thank you for having me. I enjoy coming here, first of all. But for anyone that doesn't know, I am Dr. Shannon. I am CEO and founder of Hope Within Counseling. And we are a virtual and in-person counseling office. And so even I'm located in Texas physically, but actually right now we're expanding. So we could do sessions in Colorado, Texas, Florida, as well as Washington State. And so I'm happy to announce that. And also I brought on someone to help me along this journey. And so we're definitely growing and expanding. And I'm excited about that. And not only that, I am also the author of Healing from Within. Healing the Wounds You Can't See. And I think even tonight's topic kind of embraces that, right? When we talk about, generation, young men and how sometimes they could let things define them. And I think sometimes that come from unhealed wounds, right? The wounds we don't see. And so I am excited about tonight's topic because when I read the topic, it brought up so many just memories for me, when I did counsel young men. And so I'm excited to talk about it and share, some of the things that I've experienced and things that I've seen to kind of help other young men in their path.
Well, thank you for that and welcome. Congratulations on your expansion in your business. Yeah. Also, I know you did share that the last time you were here, but it's such exciting news and it must be an exciting season for you.
It is because, so many, we dream about things. And so when it actually started happening, it is still, it's still like in awe, like, okay, I'm in awe of like the things that's happening to me. But I also understand like I did put in some hard work to get here. And so I've learned over the years that it's okay to embrace the hard work that I did to get here and sit in that and understand that this just didn't happen overnight, but this is years in the work and me doing the research and me doing the things that I need to get done to make this happen. And so, I'm excited. I'm excited. And so, but also humble enough to understand that not only was it me, but God was leading me throughout this whole journey. So, so thank you.
You're very welcome. I too am excited about this topic. It brought so many memories and thoughts to me just about my own personal life. I have a son as well. And so as far as relation and dynamics with my son, outside of my own personal experiences. And so this podcast is for all. We are structured and geared through the leadership and our CEO, Dr. Deborah D. Smith, who has built this platform around helping support young men to give them the tools and the nuggets that they need to be successful in life, to get off on the right foot. And even if they've gotten off track, to help them and support them getting back on track, to share that same support to the parents and caregivers and loved ones of these said young men. And so, we are in for a treat. Our audience is in for a treat.
Yes.
I ask those who are tuning in to make sure that they give this podcast a thumbs up if you're on YouTube. Give it some hearts if you're on Facebook. And we love to see the interaction in the chat. So, go ahead and dump your ideas or your comments. And if we said something that hit home for you, share that with in the chat. And also share this podcast with some loved ones, with some friends that have young men at home, and particularly single moms who have young men at home, because we need all the help we can get, right? Because look, we don't need the world to remind us anymore. We can't teach a young man how to be but we can do our best to give them the tools that they need to send them on their way. So, make sure you share. We greatly appreciate you being here. So I'm looking forward to get some information, Dr. Shannon. Again, tonight's topic is more than their mistakes, helping young men rewrite their story. So tell us, why do so many young men allow their mistakes, failures, and past decisions to define who they are?
I mean, that's a great question, right? Even when we look at the word mistake, right? This is the thing, like I always tell my clients, right? Instead of looking at it as a mistake, you can look at it as a learning experience. And sometimes it's helpful to reframe it into a learning experience versus a mistake. But sometimes, in my experience, people allow their mistakes to define them because they haven't been taught to separate the behavior from who they are as a person. And so, example, I'm gonna give you and this is the example most of the time when I'm trying to teach someone how to reframe their thoughts, and how sometimes when people tell us things over and over again, how it sticks with us. That's just like if you have a bad child and you continue to tell the child, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad, even though it's a good child. Eventually that child is going to believe they're bad. And so just like mistakes, right? If you continue to tell a person, oh, every time you do something, it's a mistake, you did this wrong, you did that wrong, eventually they're going to believe that everything they do is wrong. And it's hard to break away from that. It's hard to separate, I made this mistake, this one mistake. If someone has always told me that I'm constantly making mistakes, it's hard to recover from that because no one never taught me how to recover.
Yeah.
And so I think for our young men, and this is really for anyone, really, it's really about understanding that, we make mistakes as humans. We're human. We're going to make mistakes. But instead of saying, okay, I made a mistake, no, what did I learn from that? How can I take the information that I've learned and move forward and not allow it to define me as a person? Because sometimes we take things, right, and we look at it and we're like, a past mistake, and we could say, you know what, I did that and I should have known better. The truth is, if you knew better, right, you probably would have did something different. But the reality of it is when you look at something from, in the past and you say, I should have known better, you're judging a past version of yourself based on information you have today. And that's unfair.
It is very unfortunate. That is such a good tip, and things that we need to be aware of when teaching our sons how to learn from the lesson and not sit in the mistake. Because even as an adult, when we have to break the patterns with ourselves first, right? Because our children see us, they watch us, they see how we may beat ourselves up over a mistake, something that we may have mismanaged or mishandled or responded to and not so the best way.
Yeah.
And those things are going to happen in life because no one is perfect. It's going to happen to everyone, regardless of your age. But to know how to pick up the pieces and grow and learn from it instead of beating themselves up behind it. I've seen experiences with my son where he would just beat himself up over the way a situation was handled. If he didn't handle it differently, maybe I should have said this, or maybe I should have said that. Speak to young men who tend to hang on to those negative experiences, or maybe something that they could have handled a little bit better, but not to beat themselves over it. Once it's out there, it's out there. We can do what the work that needs to be done to move on.
Yes, and this is the thing, right? Even if you sit up there and you said, I should have done this different, or I could have done this. Once again, those are absolutely true statements, but we're judging that based on information we have today. You got to look at it from this perspective, right? You have new information right now, and you're judging this new information you have based on old decision. And so this is the thing, we can't change the past. So we have two options, right? I always tell people you have two options here, sometimes three. But in this particular one, you have two options, right? Option one is, okay, you could sit there and dwell on the things that you could have done, even though you can't change them. And that could often lead to depression because we can't change the past. And sometimes you stay stuck in those, I could have did something different, or I could have did this different. And we stay stuck in that. And so two choices, right? First choice is stay stuck in it, or two, what did I learn and learn it to move forward, right? So you have two choices because we can't do anything about a past, choice you made, right? Even if we take it from, saying mistake is a choice, it's a learning experience, right? Mm-hmm. But I think learning to, sometimes, there are mistakes, but as adults, they're learning experiences. Right. And so learning, and even with kids, right? I even tell children like, hey, that was a choice, right? Because everything we do, it is about choices, right? And so understanding that you made a choice, you didn't like the consequences of it. It's okay. You didn't like the consequences of it. But now guess what? We get to learn from that and apply that moving forward. And so really about even with those gentlemen or, that staying stuck in that I should have, it's so unfair to say that. It's so unfair to stay in it, but learn from it and say, hey, what can I do the next time? Because it will come up again. Life is a test. Life is one big test. If you fail, guess what? Don't worry. You have a chance to repeat it and do it again. So I tell people that all the time. Life is a huge test. And if you fail it the first time, that same situation is going to come back around and you're going to have another chance to do something different. And so now that you've learned, you can pass it the next time it comes around. You have the opportunity to pass it. So
that's really good. So, and speaking on that, it leads into the second question. You spoke on some of what would explain this next question, but how can a young man separate his identity from the things that he has done in the past or has experienced?
Well, once again, it's about separating the two, right? It's really about separating the two instead of saying this is who I am, right? Versus this is what I did. Like this one choice does not define who I am as a person. And I think sometimes it's hard to understand that, right? And that's why, once again, like I'm gonna go back, because like I said, this topic just reminds me so much of when I was working with young men, right? Because once again, an example is I had a client one time who would tell their kid, you were bad today at school. And I would hear that. And don't get me wrong. And I'm like, as a therapist now, I can probably look back before I was a therapist and maybe I did tell my child like, oh, you were bad at school. Right. And I had to take a step back now through a therapist lens and be like, hey, wait a minute. Instead of telling him he was bad, no, he made a bad choice. Because at an early age, you're beginning to separate the behavior, the choice from the person. Because as kids, especially if you learn that at an early age, you tend to latch on to that as an adult. And so once again, you get stuck in that this is me, this is who I am, versus this was a choice that I made and I have a chance to make a different choice moving forward. This choice does not define me. I am more than this choice. Right. In that moment, and most of the times you got to realize too, like most of the time, those choices are emotional choices, right? They're made because they're upset, they're angry, they're going through something. And so those are emotional choices that is made. And typically when you're making emotional choices, the logical brain has taken a back seat. And so everything you do is all emotional. And we all know with emotional choices, we regret them. That's just the facts. The fact is, when you make emotional choices, you always look back and be like, I could have did something different. Absolutely. And so recognizing, one, the choice was emotional. And two, right, not only was it emotional, it doesn't define you as a person. And so I think if they can hold on to that truth, the truth is it was an emotional choice. And maybe I need to look into some emotional wellness, right? And so recognizing that it was an emotional choice and maybe I need some skills to help me when I'm in emotional situations, right? With emotional wellness. And, and also, like I said, it doesn't define me as a person. So recognizing those two things and holding on to those truths can actually help someone move on. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that response. That is very important, on how to separate our identity, that we're not the mistake that happened. We're not that action that take place. We're so much bigger. And we do need to be reminded how we speak to our children and things of that nature. So we are not feeding into that.
Yeah.
What role does rejection, comparison, and the opinions of others play in shaping a young man's confidence?
It plays a huge role when you think about it, right? Rejection is hard for anyone, right? When you think about it, right? Rejection is hard. Even though we all hear the phrase, no is no, nothing is wrong with no. Completely true statement. However, it doesn't take away my experience when I hear it. And we have to be mindful of that, even with young men, right? Even with rejection. Like, yeah, we may look at it and say, hey, that was nothing, but it doesn't take away from their experience and their feelings that's attached to it. And so it plays a huge role just simply because it's everywhere now. Like when we were growing up, we had computers, and I think I'm thinking MySpace came along when we were in our 20s. But now we're looking at these young men, comparison and rejection is everywhere. Like you can't pick up your phone and look at social media without looking at someone else and saying, oh, wow, this person is living this life. I wish I could live that life. And so even though, we tell them, we, give them, like I give them tools and I say, hey, look, like that, you got to realize social media is for entertainment purposes only. And you got to look at it through that lens. It's for for entertainment purposes only. Like these people, they're paid, right, to do these things, to put these things out there. And so it's unfair to judge your life to theirs. And so not just the rejection, but the comparison and all that plays a huge role in young men, in all of us really, right? Because they're constantly holding themselves under a microscope, comparing their life to someone else. And that's the unfairness of it too, right? The unfairness of it, like constantly holding yourself under a microscope and constantly, comparing yourself to somebody else is so unfair to the individual, because at the end of the day, we're all humans and we're all unique. We all have a different skill set. And so just because you might see one person thriving in another area, they may be lacking in something else. And the thing they're lacking in, you probably thrive in.
Absolutely.
And so I always bring that to the forefront. I always make it about uniqueness. I always make it about what is your strength. I always say, what is your strength? Let's lean into that. And so instead of focusing on the things that you don't have, let's focus on the things that you do have. Let's focus on the strength. Because we can get caught up in the less than. We can get caught up in it. That less than, I don't have this and I don't have that. Okay, true. But what do you have? Let's focus on that and let's build on that, because it plays a huge role. Because once again, like I said, rejection makes you question who you are as a person. It makes you question your morals, your values, all of that. Because it's kind of like, why they didn't pick me? What did I do wrong? Yeah. So now you're questioning yourself based on someone else's no. When the truth is, they was just, like sometimes people tell us no, not because of us, but because of them. But we take that and we take and internalize that.
We do. Segue into what we were having small talk about before we got started.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Experience, and I'm good and grown. So yes. I've had some of those experiences. So it's definitely difficult. And could be challenging for young men, especially the things you hit on social media. It could be a tool for such as platforms as this, but it can also, it's just a lot of noise in social media, especially if you're plugged into multiple platforms. And
Mm-hmm.
you can lose yourself. You can lose your sense of identity because of that comparison.
Yeah.
And, maybe, a friend or a coworker or a classmate may have, 10,000 followers and you barely have three, or they seem so comfortable in their niche and you're trying to find your niche.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to get lost in that
Yeah.
sauce. And I think it really, as far as young men, they're growing into adulthood, or they're getting through high school. Their brains are still developing. We know that
Yeah.
their brains are still developing as far in comparison to young women or young ladies, and I think it really contributes to some mental health issues.
Yeah.
If they really get caught up in that social media world, looking at the outer world through the lenses of social media,
Yes.
because it also takes the attention off of oneself in some way, because you're so focused on what others are doing.
Yes. But also people don't understand, like, social media, especially with teenagers, it definitely contributes to lack of sleep. Simply because they're on their phone scrolling all night.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But also, like, you got to think about it. If I'm online scrolling all night, now I'm, going to bed 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I got to get back up at 6, 7. I've only had a few hours of sleep. So imagine how that's going to affect me when I have to go to school tomorrow. Because I can't focus, I can't concentrate, because the only thing I'm worried about, okay, last night, it's last night somebody posted something, they put this, and I know they were talking about me. Like, who said this? The things happens with lack of sleep. You can imagine quite a few things with lack of sleep, and people don't understand that. Like, sleep affects our memory, affects the way we perceive things. And so social media just plays a huge role. And I always tell, my clients, like, hey, it's for entertainment purposes only. And we got to look at it. And just like you said, right? Because I get that all the time too. Like you said, right? Okay, this person has 12,000 followers and I have 2. Well, but the truth is, you don't even know. They probably paid for all 12,000 of those followers.
Right.
But you just see the number, but you didn't see the work that that person, put in to get that.
Yes.
You don't know if they suffer from lack of sleep. You don't, and a lot, even me, like, I try to do one TikTok video. It was so demanding. I'm like, oh, how do people do this? I'm telling you, I was like, how do people do this?
Yep. Right.
But the truth,
you were dealing with what you see has been put out. So you try to make sure your video is
exactly
a certain type of way in comparison.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was like, how people do this? I'm like, you know what? But for me, like, I'm older now. And so I'm like, you know what? I can accept my flaws.
Exactly.
I can accept that, okay, every word is not going to be pronounced right. I can accept that and move on. But we're talking about teenagers here.
Yeah.
That's looking at other teens and even our young men, though.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes young men, they look at it and say, oh, I'm far behind. I'm not where I should be as compared to people that's my same age. And so once again, that plays into their confidence, right? Because if I don't feel like I'm where I belong, then I'm less confident. And so all of that plays a huge role in your confidence and your self-esteem. And so sometimes it's okay to take, a break away from social media and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to put it down for tonight, or I'm not going to watch it. But sometimes it's hard, though, for our young people. But just learning that I have to give myself a break and nurture myself without looking at other people or comparing myself to other people.
Yeah. Yes. You actually feel better when you put the phone down and walk away. Mm-hmm. You create a structure where the last hour, if I'm trying to go to bed at 11, I need to put the phone on the charger, put it away, stick it in a drawer, something, and just have that last hour of decompression. Because you can get in the bed, head on the pillow, and you're just scrolling.
Yes.
And it's very true. It's happened to me, and I'm doing what I can to get better. So I know it can happen. It happens to everyone, and especially
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I want to thank our viewers. We have some viewers on with us this evening.
Oh, awesome.
Shout out and say hello. We have Coach Deborah D. Smith, who is tuning in. Good evening, Coach Deborah. Glad to see you. And my mom, Miss Katie Cradell, she's tuning in. She's my biggest cheerleader. Love her. And we have Miss Camira on with us this evening. Thank you for tuning in and joining. We greatly appreciate each of you who are tuned in, participating in the chat. We love that. We love it gives us encouragement, and it gives us an opportunity to show other viewers what your comments are. And so keep that going, feedback and interaction going in the chat, and make sure you like this video, this live, give it some hearts, and share with a loved one that has young men at home. How can mothers support their sons without constantly reminding them of their past mistakes?
Oh, that's a great question, because that's where my parenting skills come into play. Well, the first thing is learning to be supportive without shaming. That's the first step. Learning to be supportive without shaming them for whatever they did. That's the first step. But also teaching them about accountability versus shame. Because accountability is, I did this, let's figure out what I can do the next time. Shame is, you did this and this is who you are. And so ways that moms can support their sons is by teaching them the difference. First of all, teaching them, hey, it's okay to be accountable. Because I think we miss that too, though. We miss that part of teaching, people to be accountable, of saying, yes, I did it. Next time I can do better, or next time XYZ. Right? I think that's the key, but also learning it's okay not to shame your kid. They made a choice that you're not happy with, and maybe they're not happy with it either. But instead of shaming them, like having a conversation and reminding them of who they are. You are my son, you are this, you know what I'm saying? Like pour into them. Like in those moments, like learning to pour into your kids versus, just constantly talking about what they did. Mm-hmm. They know what they did. Mm-hmm. You don't got to remind them. But what you do have to remind them of who they are. I'm raising you to be a leader. You're strong, you're confident. You get what I'm saying? Like pour into them and telling them who they are, give them those reminders. And so a lot of times with mom, just supporting them and listening too. Like, I think part of that is missing as well. Like just learning to listen, because sometimes kids are, they're doing things or they did something, not understanding the consequences of it. And so once again, those are teachable moments. Hey, you did this. Did you understand that because of this could be a possible consequence? No, if I had thought about that, I wouldn't have did it. That's a teachable moment. And so now, mom could say, okay, yeah, I know you didn't know the consequences, but now you do. So understand, if it happens again, you get to make a different choice. Or these consequences are going to come back to you, but they may be a little bit harsher. But learning to have these conversations versus condemnation, right? We don't have to condemn them, but we do have to learn to say, okay, you're accountable. You did it. I get it. How can we do something different the next time? And just being supportive. Go ahead.
I'm so sorry, Dr. Shannon. I want to say that in a lot of parenting styles, that this is like a generational thing that you spoke on, not getting onto them and shaming them, because many parents think if we're not going to ignore the behavior or what was done, but I'm going to get on my kid and I'm going to get them straight about what they did. And in getting them straight or getting onto them or representing them for the situation, a lot of times those comments that come in between that correction is that they are shaming that child. And a lot of times from past generations, that was considered to be good parenting when you didn't let that slide, when you got onto them and that it's just a fine line.
Yes.
In addressing the behavior and not shaming them, and redirecting them and things of that nature, holding them accountable without shaming. That is something that definitely has to be practiced again and again. A parent has to be intentional because, again, what we've seen from what we've dealt with as children and what we may have seen, even if we didn't deal with it in our own household, we've seen it in households and families that were near us, close to us, cousins, neighbors, things of that nature. This is how you make sure that you keep your child in check and that you don't ignore that behavior. And I'm going to give them their butt because, that's what good parents do. We don't let that slide.
But that's the thing, though, but that shame, right? Once again, you lower that self-esteem because, just I remember going to school and parents coming and, spanking their kids in front of the classroom. Like that was the norm. Never happened to me. Yes. But that kid had to come back and face us. And not only that, I'm pretty sure we bullied them, but we didn't use the word bully back then. But imagine that trauma that kid endure with you coming there, spanking them in front of their whole classroom. And now I have to face you guys because I made a poor decision at that moment. Like that's not always good because you got to realize, so what are we teaching our children? That now you can't even make a mistake because what you're really teaching them, hey, the next time I get into trouble, I'm not telling you because the last time you did this. And we wonder why, they didn't come to me. Well, look at how you behaved the last time. Like I wouldn't come to you either. Let's be real. I wouldn't come either.
Yeah.
Because we have to look at it like as parents, we have to learn to be more supportive. And this is the thing. And just because I say more supportive, it doesn't mean no consequences. I'm a firm believer in consequences. I'm going to tell you that up front. However, though, I don't have to be upset. I don't have to shame you. I don't have to do any of those things to implement consequences. Like, you got a D in class. You already know the consequence of that. Hey, no TV for a week. I don't have to get upset about it. I just know, hey, look, you did that. This is a consequence of it. We've already had a discussion about it. So just because we're being supportive doesn't mean there's no consequence. And I think sometimes we confuse the two. Because we think, I'm supporting them, so I'm going to let it slide. No, you're supporting them, but you're always going to give them consequences as well. Because even with me, with my clients, right, with my kids, and I'm counseling kids, and the parent come in, the parents were so excited. I'm going to tell you this. When I was counseling kids, the parents used to be so excited to come tell me when their child did something that they didn't approve of.
Okay.
Yeah. It would be so, let me tell you what they did in school. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And so, but I'm telling you, and I used to be so puzzled, like, why are you excited to tell me your kid, made a poor choice, right? But I'm gonna tell you, so I recall one time, parent came in and they were like, let me tell you, what he did in class. And, he went to, she went to telling me all those things, right? And I said, okay, what are the consequences? But the school said, he's suspended for 3 days. I said, but that's the school consequences. What are yours? Mm-hmm. See, there's a difference. See, I can support you, but I'm also give you consequences, not only from the school, but from me too. Because you got to learn when you make poor choices, there are consequences that come with it. And I don't have to beat you to explain that to you.
That's good.
They can learn. Yeah, they learn through that. Like we as humans, we learn through consequences. If there's no consequences, the behavior will happen right again. I don't have to beat you Because I can get over that real quick. Yeah, does it hurt in the moment? Definitely.
Yeah.
But guess what though? But I can still support you and be like, hey, you did this. This is the consequence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we as parents, yeah, we got to learn to do that too without always getting upset with our children because they're tiny humans.
They're gonna make mistakes. They're gonna mess up.
Absolutely.
We do, but ain't no, life will whoop our butt in a certain kind of way, right?
Absolutely.
But we're not getting the spanking, we're not getting no restriction. But yeah, our children, is part of growing up. It's part of life.
But also, I think sharing with your children too, like when you do make a mistake, but also keep it kid friendly. Like, like what I mean by this, age appropriate. Like meaning you can make a mistake and I can share that with my children, but I don't have to share all the details as an adult. You're gonna like depending on the age, making it age appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what, Mom, I made a mistake at work today. And now, I'm dealing with the consequences. And so I'm kind of sad about it. Like having that conversation because they could see you being vulnerable too. And understand that, oh, Mom, she gets reprimanded too. It's not just me.
Yep.
And this is how she bounced back. This is how she recovers. Right? Because once again, we're still their role model and we're still teaching them. And so if we could teach them that we make mistakes and we could recover, they'll learn the exact same thing from us.
Man, I tell you, there needs to be a parenting boot camp for different ages. Because what's embedded in us is what we seen is is generational.
Yeah.
And what we see in today's culture, even if it's not generational, we see this is the way that you parent your kid, and so yeah, there needs to be a parenting boot camp, and I think every parent needs to go to at least 3 or 4 of them during their child's rearing. My goodness.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what are some practical ways young men can begin rebuilding their confidence, vision, and sense of purpose?
I would say really by setting small goals for themselves. Like start off small. Like, tomorrow I'll wake up and get to school on time. That could be small goal, right? And it doesn't have to be this huge thing, but in order to build your confidence, you have to set small goals for yourself, accomplish them, and celebrate them.
Okay.
And it has to be realistic. Because over time, as you begin to celebrating your victories, your confidence, of course, is going to get a little boost. Because you're like, I did that. I can do that. By just with those little small victories, like setting, doing like small things, and also just keeping promises to themselves. Because sometimes I'm saying because we make promises to ourselves we don't keep. And so even for young men, learning that, hey, if I make a promise to myself, let me keep it.
Yes. Set some standards and follow through.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, but also like in purpose too, like purpose is kind of hard, right? Because I think that's an ongoing thing.
It evolves.
Yes. And so recognizing that just because in this season, this may be what my purpose look like, understanding, like you said, it evolves over time. And so I think for young men, right, like looking for their purpose, that's tough because they question a lot. And so the purpose might be in your passion, right? The purpose, it could be in a number of things, discipline, faith, service. It could be in a number of things, right? But finding your purpose is unique to them. And so it's really about, okay, what does God have planned for me? And looking at it from that perspective. And I understand like everybody doesn't look to God, but I do. So if you're not comfortable praying about it, ask somebody who is, comfortable praying about it. Like, what is God's purpose for me? Have him to reveal it to me. Even though somebody else can pray for you, but God still has to reveal it to you, to that individual.
Yeah, that's so true. Good.
Yeah, you can pray for me, but he's still got to reveal the purpose to me. Like he still has to give me the vision, even though someone else may be praying for me, which is great. but he still has to give me the vision. He's not going to give it to somebody else. So,
Yes, and that's when you feel more confident about what has been given to you, because someone may see potential in you and pour into you from that position, and they'll tell you, "I see so much potential in you." But if you
yeah,
haven't sought God, or as you're saying, your higher power,
yeah,
there's a higher
yeah,
source, a source that's bigger than
yeah,
us individually, and if you haven't sought that, you're not going to feel confident. It's not going to resonate with what someone else see in you as far as
yeah,
your potential.
yeah,
And so young
definitely.
men have to be able to capture that on their own with
Yes,
God. Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
How can a young man learn to be comfortable being different and not feel pressure to imitate everyone around him?
That could be challenging for some. I'm gonna just be real. That could be challenging. Like just being different and unique because so many times like society put these standards on people to fit in.
Mhm.
I mean, and so it's challenging to be comfortable in that. And the reality of it is that sometimes they may never be comfortable in it. And that's a hard truth to carry, but the truth is we're all unique. And so if you're different, right, like leaning into that and be like, okay, you know what, I'm different. It's okay. I'm gonna stand out and it's okay. And there's a difference between telling yourself it's okay versus I'm comfortable. Because I think everything in life bring a certain nervousness to us.
Mhm.
Right. And so just understand it for young men is challenging to just be comfortable in being different because society is always going to try to pull you in a certain direction. But part of that is what the last question talked about, the purpose. If I know what my purpose is, I can stay confident in being whoever I am, whether it's different or not. So part of that is for me to be comfortable in being different, I have to know my purpose. And
That's
so great question, right? Because they both tie in together. I got to know my purpose to be okay.
Well, I want you to speak to the parents that could contradict that in their sons, young men, because we want our sons to, embrace who they are, being different and not feeling pressured. But we say that, but once we start to receive that, you're like, well, this kid is closed off, he not talking and this and that, and closed off might mean he's not as outgoing as I am,
Absolutely. Yeah.
of that nature, or vice versa. You may have a parent who may be an introvert and may have trust issues with other people, and their child
Yeah.
may be outgoing and everybody's their friend, and that parent could be like, that ain't your friend, ain't everyone is not your friend, and just
Yes.
these conflicts, this
Yes.
zig and zag that you have going on because a parent is unable to embrace the
Yes.
uniqueness of their child's character and identity. And so speak to those parents who may have that issue. Instead of, you got to pray over our children and make sure they're not walking down the wrong path, that the people that they're around, that they know and trust, that
Yeah.
good for them. And that if your child is not as outgoing, that doesn't necessarily mean that something's wrong. This could just be a part of their personality, and they're going to blossom in their own way. But it may look different from your individual blossom as a parent. So speak to those parents who could be struggling with that and contradicting their child's unique identity.
Well, I would definitely tell parents. The first thing is that I'm gonna be diplomatic about it. But the first thing is like understanding your trauma shouldn't raise your kid. Like if you're over anxious and like you said, some of the examples you gave, like that could be trauma speaking.
Mhm.
You're allowing your trauma to raise your kid. And so the truth is as parents, you gotta deal with your own stuff. instead of putting it on your child. And sometimes parents, they do, they experience trauma. And I know this because I talk to them. They experience trauma. That trauma ruins, kind of like runs their life. And they raise their kids according to that trauma because it's like, I want to protect them. But the reality of it is you're not protecting them. You're really opening them up to predators and other people, because then they're going to feel like they have to kind of skirt around you and not share things with you. And so the same thing that you're trying to protect them from, you're actually letting it in. But first of all, parents, you got to get your stuff together first. You have to. And you can't raise your kids just because you feel like, like, okay, my mom did this, and so I want to do the opposite. What I've learned is the opposite. You're always going to be that person. You're always going to do the very thing you say, I don't want to do, because you're so fixated on it. Mm-hmm. And so if you're trying to raise your kid and you're not accepting them as their own person, then you got to get your stuff checked out. Because if you can't accept your kid, then your kid is going to grow up not accepting themselves.
This is good, because I'm telling you, this parenting boot camp thing, I think I'm on to something, because it's so deep rooted.
Yes.
Parents who are trauma parenting, as you put it, it's so deep rooted and where they can't even identify that, or even if they do identify their trauma, they still feel in their heart that it's the right thing to do as far as the direction they're trying to impress on their child. Yes. And so that's a good one. And that takes that's family counseling. That takes some unwriting there. Wow.
Well, I mean, tell you this, like you said, like because I hear that too. I feel like I should protect them. I feel like, I should. And yes. You know what I tell them? Your feelings are valid, but they're not facts. You can feel that way all day, but it's not facts. The fact is your child needs room to breathe and be themselves.
So good. You're going to set somebody free.
I hope so. I hope so.
That's so good. That's so good.
You make me want to go back into my parenting classes. Let's have my parenting classes back up.
I can't believe we're down to one more question I have for you. This topic has really been awesome, speaking on more than their mistakes, helping young men rewrite their story. I really feel there needs to be a part 2. Even though my children are young adults now, but I see a lot in these questions, and I see some things in myself. I see things with people I know and love, and what I've watched in different households. And a lot of parents need to be broken free so we can make sure that our sons don't walk down this path of thinking that they are their mistakes, things of that nature. So what would you say to a young man who feels like he has made too many mistakes, still build a successful and meaningful life?
I would say for that one, that one in itself, like, because I hear too many mistakes, right? I'm like, okay, what is too many? Like I'm thinking, like now I'm like, okay, what is too many? Because that's me and my therapist. I'll be like, okay, what's too many, right? But the truth is, like, explaining, we all make mistakes. There's no such thing as too many. Your mistakes, once again, they don't define you. They may explain some things about you. Don't get me wrong, because we could look at historical data. And that's what I call it. Like, once we hear now, we can look at historical data and look at some of the choices you've made, and it can explain some things about you. But it doesn't define who you are, and it doesn't define your future. And so helping them to navigate that, like help them to navigate, like, we all make mistakes, but guess what? We here now, we have a choice to make today. So you have choices, right? You can choose to let it define you and sit in it, or you can choose to learn from it and grow. And so recognizing there's no such thing as too many mistakes, but they're learning experiences that can help explain like who you are as a person. Because I can listen to someone's story and I can hear some of the things that, some of the choices they've made, and I can tell them, hey, based on what you've told me and my experience, this is what's happening. And so even in that case, even if you think you made too many mistakes, I would say seek out a counselor. Not because you're making too many mistakes, because a counselor can kind of look at that data you give them and give you some context to what's happening. Because sometimes it may be, the truth is, right, it may be you're making these choices because you may believe something about yourself that may not be true. Sometimes you can make these choices because you're following someone. Are you doing something to fit in? It could be a number of things that's happening, but a professional could look at the data, look at the choices you made, and help you put some context to it and give you an explanation and help you move forward. And so it's not always about just sitting in it, but also recognizing I have a choice. I can get someone to help me with that. And so just recognizing that. Like, even if it's not me, like I'm okay with that too, right? Even if it's not me, but just calling a professional and having someone to help them with that emotional wellness, help them make better choices, help them they can help you give, context to the things that you've been experiencing. Because some things may be actually out of your control and you're not even aware of it. But someone, right, a professional can help you recognize, like, hey, maybe this is what's going on with you and you have no control. But this is something that we can do to help you gain control. And so just recognizing that, hey, your past doesn't define you. It can explain some things about you, but it doesn't define you. But you have a choice to build your own future. And so
good. I feel like young men also should be reminded that of course, none of us know our expiration date, but typically you've only lived a small fraction of your life. You have so much more life ahead of you. And we're going to all continually make mistakes. Don't let that define you. And so they shouldn't feel like there's no hope for them. But it happens. We get stuck in our rut and keep replaying what has happened, the things that we've done. But as parents and caregivers, if your loved one is not seeking counseling, we need to continuously remind them there's so much greater ahead of you.
Absolutely.
And your mistakes doesn't define who you are. So that's good. Thank you so much for that.
You're so welcome. Yeah, you're so welcome. They need to hear that. They need to know that it's okay to seek help, not because they're in crisis, but maybe they just need some explanations.
That's right. Right. As I said, the brains are still developing. We need someone to help us understand our thoughts, our emotions, and know how to live beyond our emotions and make decisions beyond our emotions. And, I know that your patients, your clients, they're blessed to have you because you bring great knowledge, expertise to this field, just as you have for our viewers this evening. This has been an awesome topic. So any closing remarks, please share, and also share with the audience how they can contact you with your website and how they can find your book.
All right. Awesome. Yes. Thank you. So definitely some closing remarks is just being mindful that we're all human. We all make choices that sometimes we're not proud of, and sometimes we call them mistakes, and sometimes we can call it a learning experience. But recognizing it doesn't define who you are as a person. You have the capability and choice to do something different with yourself. And so even if you feel like you don't have support, you have support. It may not come wrapped in a package you want it wrapped in, but we as people, we always have support. And so just being mindful of that. So, but, definitely thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. like I said, reading that topic, it brought back so many memories. Like, you even make me like, should I start my parenting classes again? because that was a joy of mine, right? Just talking to parents and dialoguing, because a lot of times parents think they're the only ones that's in it. And so when you could connect with other parents and recognize we both have this shared experience of raising young men together, and we have these problems that we're trying to tackle, and you have a support system, like having those parents in the room and just talking to them, and just some listening and hearing like somebody else express how they feel or what they're going through, like the sigh of relief, like, oh my God, I'm not the only one. Like, that brings about a peace and a calmness too, as parents. And so I'm really considering it like now. I'm like tonight, I'm really considering it, right? Because I kind of miss this. And so, yeah, I mean, but I do adults, don't get me wrong. When I started off, I did, I work only with kids and their parents, because I recognize in therapy, and I just can't do therapy without the parents, because the parents always play a huge role. And I am so grateful. Every time I'm here, you always ask, how can moms support their sons? Because the truth is, the parents make a huge difference. Whether you think you do or not, you play a huge role in the healing of your kids. And so I love that, just because even for me as a therapist, like, I don't do therapy with kids and not involve the parents. It doesn't work that way. So I really appreciate that. Yes. But anyone want to reach out to me, you can always visit my website at www.hopewithincounseling.com. Or even if you want to buy the book is available on hopewithincounseling.com. And so across all platforms, when you think about Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, is always going to be Hope Within Shannon. hopewithincounseling.com. So you can reach me across all platforms with Hope Within Counseling.
Thank you. I hope you guys make use of that and take advantage of such great expertise. And Shannon, we are so grateful you joined us again this evening. I look forward to next time.
Yes, I do too.
Thank you so much for being willing to come to this platform and share.
You're so welcome.
And be a help to so many parents and young men.
Yeah.
Thank you again. Thank you to our viewers who tuned in this evening. We greatly appreciate you. Thank you for your interaction in the chat. And thank you for sharing this with loved ones who have young men at home. So each and every one of you have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Good night.